This is Kirsten Myers' story about navigating breast cancer with clarity and courage. This series honours the legacy of Kirsten Myers, who faced her diagnosis with determination, deep research, and an unwavering commitment to living fully for her family. Across these episodes, we'll explore the different layers of her time with breast cancer: medical treatments, nutrition, exercise, complementary care, family dynamics, and the power of self-advocacy. We'll bring you intimate conversations with her loved ones and informative discussions with her care team and medical experts. This podcast shares the real stories, the lessons, the moments of strength and clarity. Our hope is that by listening to Kirsten's story, women and families facing breast cancer can feel supported, informed and empowered to make choices that reflect not just their treatment plan, but their values, their bodies and their lives. I'm Peter Birch, and this is Kirsten's story. And it's shared so that no woman has to walk their own path alone. This podcast is intended to honour Kirsten's legacy and provide information that may help others feel informed and supported. Nothing you hear in this podcast should be taken as medical advice. Everyone's situation is unique, and medical decisions should always be made in consultation with a qualified health professional. If you're living with breast cancer or supporting someone who is, please speak to your trusted healthcare provider about your individual circumstances. In this episode, we'll hear from Kirsten's husband Shane and her cousin Megan, who was also her medical power of attorney. Together they share the story of who Kirsten was beyond her illness: a wife, a mother, and the centre of a community that she built with love and determination. Shane and Megan talk about the choices Kirsten made through diagnosis and treatment, how she balanced fear with independence, and the way she kept control of what mattered most: her family, her time, and her independence. Shane, Megan, thanks so much for joining. Shane, I might start with you. Firstly, tell me about Kirsten.
We were married for 26 years. We met in the UK in 1999. We moved to Sydney 2000, moved to Melbourne 2001 and started our family. And came to Melbourne, came to Australia with what I would call no infrastructure, family infrastructure. And I think based on Kirsten's personality, her compassion, her empathy, her love for people, we built a community around us. And, I think I can only talk about Kirsten to talk about, the support and for us as a family, after her passing and, in the last couple of weeks, when we were in hospital. I think that pays testimony to the person she was, to the contribution she made, the mum she was, the wife she was, and the love that everybody had for her. I mean, I think we had roughly about 800 people at her tribute, and we're calling it a tribute because she refused to call it a funeral. And, lots of people online, and, we get into the conversation, but we're going to start a charity in her name, and we started a GoFundMe, and we raised almost $45,000 through that. So I think those kinds of things probably show more testament to her than I can sit here and talk about.
Yeah, Megan, it's quite the village when we talk about some quite a large village that someone, coming into a country can then build around them. And it sounded like from the conversations I've heard too, she was quite central to all of that.
Very much so. I'm lucky. So Kirsten was my cousin, my big cousin, so 2 years older than me. And we grew up in New Zealand together, and we only lived an hour and a half away. So we spent a lot of holidays together and a lot of weekends. And so she was always kind of my big cousin that I looked up to and admired her strength and determination and her kind of go-getting attitude. And then I was lucky enough to spend some time with her when we were both at university. I was in Dunedin, she was in Christchurch. And then when I moved to Melbourne with my husband and young baby in 2010, I was really lucky to have Kirsten and Shane because they were my only family in Australia, and to have them close by, be it across a bridge, but to still be around to kind of have that family support. And she was a very determined, fierce, amazing amazing woman. I'm really lucky to have, been her cousin, but to be her friend as well.
And so I'll just, because she'd probably smack me if I did, she was, if I didn't say this, she was fearless in her independence.
Yeah.
And I don't mean fearless as in not scared. She was scared, but she was fearless in her independence to attack anything specifically, I guess, the last 5 years to attack her disease. And I think I mentioned, in I guess you can call it a eulogy at her tribute. We throw courage around like it's some colloquial term. She was fearless in her courage and independence in just attacking and staring down the disease and making sure that she did it her way. And I think one of the things that we're sitting here for is to make sure that other women and other patients realize that they can do this their way and make sure the journey is about them and not about their disease.
Yeah, no, look, I feel so grateful to have the opportunity to learn about Kirsten in the short space of time, but then to also it's interesting that you're so passionate about sharing her story in this format. I'd love to understand a little bit more from you on why it's important that we have these conversations, because in this series we're speaking to a number of people about what happened along that journey that can be messy or personal and a moment that sometimes it's rare to really dive in and understand what's going on, and for many people it's something they've never experienced before. So tell me about the why behind this series a bit more.
So there were two phases, there were two phases in this journey. There was what we would, I guess, what Megan and I would talk about is kind of the first phase, which is when Kirsten was originally diagnosed and there's a cure. Now, I'm no doctor, whatever that means. There's a cure. There's some way it could be treated and it goes away and you could continue your normal life. Your new normal life. That period was very short for Kirsten. And it is what it is. I think, and this is a bit of a preamble to it, I think a lot of the things, Kirsten and I always spoke about, you ask inevitable questions. Why us? Why me? I'm a good person. Why is it not happening to the scumbags? And I think that's a 100% valid question that you'll continue to ask, and we still ask that. I think the important bit that we realized is we can only move on if we can control what we can control. And all we could control was the way we reacted and the way allowed Kirsten to react and go on board with what she needed to do in her journey, for want of a better term, to be able to make it the experience and she wanted, or the pathway she wanted. One of the things she wanted to do in the second phase, when she was diagnosed as metastatic and which is obviously incurable, was to try every foreseeable option to prolong her life. She accepted, that's probably not true. Not that she accepted, she understood that the likelihood of a cure for metastatic was slim. I think, but she wanted to try everything possible to prolong her life. And what she learned and what she wanted to do, she wanted to write a book. And she wanted to share that book. I think I said before, she was selfless. And she wanted to be able to pass on that information and those experiences to other women, that they could own their own journey. So, I use an example. A friend of one of our kids' mates in his basketball team a couple of years ago, by coincidence, had breast cancer at the same time as Kirsten. She was diagnosed as metastatic at the same time, different type. She went on a trial, which was 3 years ago, which ironically was the trial that enabled the last treatment cycle that Kirsten was on to be able to go for it because it was then on PBS. But, and actually I've never told you this, so probably February, Kirsten passed away May. February, we got a call from this mum, or Kirsten got a call from this mum saying, hey, do you want to go for lunch? I've just gone for my 2-year checkup and I'd like to talk to you about it. They went and had a chat, and she had been in remission through this trial. So it worked really well, but she was still on the trial. But they discovered brain mets 2 years after being in remission. And this mum was obviously concerned, and that's an understatement, but, brain mets, and she had to go back into chemo and potentially surgery. And at that stage, we already knew in Kirsten's journey we were in trouble. But Kirsten forgot about that. And she, spoke and shared some of the things that Kirsten had learned, specifically, when Tanya comes in to talk about some of the support you could give through treatments, especially the type of chemo she was going on. So I guess that's a long way of saying the reason we're here is because Kirsten never got to write her book. Her journey ended pretty quickly. So we never had that time. But by doing this podcast series, that can be her book. And we can share, the people who will be coming on will be the people, at different stages. Megan, who's very, obviously unbelievably close to us, and quite rightly, we made Megan our medical power of attorney to take any difficult medical decisions out of my hands. But also, people who were instrumental in shaping that journey for Kirsten and helping her along the way. And, at a later stage through this process, we'll get friends and family to talk about what they experienced. But it's fundamentally a way to help women. And to get that story across. We don't have any perfect answers. In fact, we've probably got no answers. But we've just got a couple of things that we found out that I don't know if they worked. I can tell you what they did do is they helped Kirsten control and be in control of what she did, and not let this disease control everything we did, everything. She still maintained her independence.
I think for me, being a doctor as well, kind of a unique perspective to do it, is that, people get diagnoses, horrible diagnoses all the time, and you kind of go into the medical world and you feel very helpless, and you see this in patients all the time. You feel very helpless and very overwhelmed by the amount of information and stuff that you don't know about. And I think for Kirsten, knowing her all my life, but knowing how determined she was. And I remember at university, she'd, study till 1 a.m. and she'd just do a double degree in a short amount of time. She was really determined to kind of know everything and to make sure she'd covered every base. And I think for a lot of people, they don't know where to start. They have no idea where to look at. And so they just accept what they're told kind of medically and do it. And they kind of don't know where to go. And so in the conversations I had with Kirsten around this, it was around all the stuff that she's learned and all the hours that she spent in and all the books, she read and the people she's talked to and all the books she made me read, which was great, things that I wasn't aware of, that she wanted to be able to share that and give that to someone else so that they didn't have to spend all the hours, but kind of gave them some knowledge to empower them to kind of take the journey on and to own it and to go where they needed to. And I was really happy to help her and support her to do that and to read lots of things that perhaps as a doctor I wouldn't have ever read before. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I think, just listening to what Megan said and a couple of things I've mentioned, I think the important thing for her in the information she had and the conversation she had about choices, because that's really what you've got, is you've got choices and they're all shit. It's just the variety. Is that she wanted to be able to trust the decision was the right one, not be told it was the right one. And that's why, and if we can do the series and point people or get people, other women to potentially go down a path and goes, you know what, I trust the decision. I'm going down that path versus I'm being told it's right. I think it's a very, well, in Kirsten, and Megan can comment, a very different mindset in approaching what are just shitty decisions.
Yeah.
There are no good decisions.
Yeah. And so that, to me, that sounds like, in order to trust this, you need to understand, what's behind it, which then...
It's about knowing where to go, knowing what to understand. It's about not going onto a Facebook treatment site and seeing all these people who've been cured or in remission and going, well, hang on, I get that, but what type did you have? And all the complexities, and understanding the complexities, and actually understanding the complexities of breast cancer, not to a medical standard, but a standard where you're comfortable that decisions you're making are the right decisions. Because then I think you can, well, I don't think what we saw in Kirsten was somebody who could control what she did.
Megan, we've talked about Kirsten's village and the people who support her, and even hearing about and seeing the tribute and people who showed up, it seemed like more than friends and family. How would you describe the breadth of Kirsten's village that she had around her?
Kirsten very much created that village. She was a real force, very determined, but she made everybody feel important. So you're having a conversation with her, you felt important to her, and she would reach out and kind of do anything for anyone and organise things. And when you read some of the tributes, that came through really strongly, just about, families that had met her at school or basketball or footy, and just how she made them feel and made them feel part of that and belonging, and always there with a camera to take pictures of things and organising things and making sure people got there. Like, she was really invested in the community. And so she created that village because you wanted to be around her, you wanted to spend time with her, and you felt like you mattered and you belonged. And so when you see how many people came to a tribute and then, to the event the next day, it was because of her as a person and her personality that people wanted to be there. And even people who didn't see her on a daily basis, but had some involvement with her over the years, just wanted to come because she was just, pretty special.
Megan, as you mentioned, there's, that you've got that fortunate combination of, knowing Kirsten and being a medical professional, and that can be helpful as, say, medical power of attorney. For someone that doesn't have access to a clinician in the family or a really close clinician they can connect with, do you have any advice on choosing someone they can trust?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to know who to trust, and you're right, being a medic makes it easy. Still makes it hard, I think, sometimes as a family member who's got to do that, because you've got to flip between your kind of emotional side and caring to your real kind of clinical side. I think you need to find someone who is actually quite pragmatic and quite practical and can almost switch off those emotions to be able to make those decisions. So it has to be someone that you can trust will do what you want them to do, even if they might not agree with it. So you have to be able to trust them. But when it comes to that time that you know that the emotions won't get the better of them and that they can actually carry out your wishes. So it may not be someone in your immediate family. It might be someone that's slightly more distant or a friend that you know is able to do it. But I do think you have to think very carefully, and probably having someone that's one step removed, as in not the immediate family members, is probably better, because they can then make those decisions away from those emotions. So you really got to put a lot of thought into it, and also be okay to change it, because you might decide, and it might be 2 or 3 years beforehand, but things change, situations, relationships change. Should be okay to kind of review it regularly and go, is this still the right person for me? And should I move it on to somebody else that may have come into your life?
I've heard a few times too, the phrase, you can only control the things that you can control. So how did you find Kirsten's approach to, a lot of uncertainty in those difficult times?
Yeah. I think, like anything and any experience, you started off going, I'm going to control everything. And then I think, especially in something like this, you realise there are components you can control and there are components you can't. And I think in Kirsten's own mind, it took her not a long time, didn't have a long time. It took her a period of time to understand and to accept she couldn't control the biology. Right. She couldn't control. So the big thing for us, and medical professionals like Megan and the oncologist who who was coming on, I think the big change for us, and I know the big change in Kirsten's approach was when her breast cancer type changed from hormone receptor positive to triple negative. So when she was originally diagnosed, she was hormone receptor positive breast cancer. Yes, she had lobular, which is not a great cancer type, but she was hormone receptor positive, which means she could go through a well-proven, evidence-based treatment regime of chemo, radiation, 2 surgeries, and then a drug regime every single day of tablets that a view was you're good to go for another 20 years. Okay, doesn't matter, right? Obviously, when there was metastatic, there was a debate around whether they do another biopsy or not, because to see if the treatments were right and were targeted correctly. Due to Kirsten's metastases, she couldn't get that biopsy. When we eventually got that biopsy, it proved that her cancer had changed to triple negative, which is, in a range of shitty options, is a shitty option, right? And I saw her approach then change to, well, all I can control now is my physical well-being, my mental well-being, my diet, and I know my treatments are not going to be ones that are going to be good on my body. So how can I manage my body? And so that's and her focus became, I'm controlling that. I know I now can't control the biology. So I'm going to leave that alone. That didn't mean she didn't worry about the biology and didn't go from every 3rd week tumor marker testing, and we'd graph the results and kind of work out where we're at. Yes, you still worry about where it's going, but you can't control that. So I think that's how she did it. And then I think also on the other side, controlling the kids and controlling the messaging that we gave them and controlling the way we ran the house and the way we ran our lives and the way, she could control that. And I would argue she did an unbelievably wonderful job of that. And she did an unbelievably good job of controlling the symptom, all those other things. But our kids are in a better place because of the way she focused on the messaging, their lives and everything else, and then trying to do the other things on the side.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially in that last 12 months, it was around making sure that you as a family got to have some really good experiences and stuff, rather being this kind of regimented, right, chemo's every 2nd week. Like, actually, we're going to go on this trip and I'm going to put it off by 3 days, and we're going to, just because you're right, she couldn't control the biology by then, and it probably wasn't going to change particularly much, but it meant that for you as a family and for the kids, you've got these wonderful kind of things that you got to do together. And she'd always ring me and go, so I want to go away, but I'm going to put my chemo for 3 or 4 days. What do you think? Is it going to change things? And so we had a lot of kind of medical conversations around that part of it, to make sure that, we weren't going to harm the biology or make things worse for it, but that she could actually make sure that life still happened, because with a lot of diseases, it can take over and it becomes your entire
Yeah.
life, and then you don't get family time, and you're not right. And so one of the things that, I mean, Kirsten and I talked more than we saw each other because we lived on opposite sides of town. We both, between us got quite a few children. And if we talked, we'd always say, right, we're going to talk about the cancer bit now and where we're up to and the treatments and scan results or whatever else. But then we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about what our kids are doing, what we're up to, how my work's going, those kind of things. And so we really made sure that it didn't overwhelm our relationship either, that it, was part of it, but it wasn't the whole thing. And I think from the outside, like I kind of think looking the outside to their, nuclear family, that's what she did so incredibly well, like just amazingly well.
I mean, I guess you hear these stories and you watch the TV programs, but I think we and everybody actually saw someone who lived with the disease. She didn't die with the disease, and life went on,
yeah.
But it went on with the help of everybody who's we've asked to come onto this to explain how they helped, and maybe that'll help someone else. But I think the biggest control that she got back was she was able to live,
yeah.
and not have this disease control. It controlled a lot, but it didn't control everything,
I could only imagine some people's approach might be, if I've received, this awful diagnosis, and, in a family situation with children, you might in yourself think, okay, I can demarcate things, as you were kind of talking about, Megan, and I'm going to deal with the cancer side and then the family side. A lot of people might be worried about, well, I don't want to burden other individuals with, at what point do I communicate my current status? And some people can choose to be very transparent and have everyone on the same page of information. Others may choose to perhaps, only give, when do we involve the children, or when do we involve, other broader family members? I don't even know how you start making that kinds of decisions, but I'll get any kind of insight from you.
Yeah, so I think, look, all I can comment is on the conversations we had, Kirsten and I had about that, and Kirsten had with Megan, is again different conversations at different stages, right? We made a decision that we would tell our kids, and knowing our kids at the first time Kirsten was diagnosed, they were 9, 11, 14 and 16, right? So we made the decision that we would tell them what they needed to know. The popular belief was you have to tell them everything. And we went, yeah, no. Not because we were afraid to tell them, but we still wanted them to live. And we still wanted them to experience mum, and for mum to, for them to go through that cycle. Now there was some, so and I think that was okay. Well, no, that was right. And I do think, though, when you do that as a parent, depending on the age of your kids, you have to accept that they don't get it. And you have to accept that if you think they're going to clean their room or fold the washing or make dinner, it's not going to happen, right? They're just going to go down the path that they're going down. And I did notice a noticeable difference in the first part of the journey with Kirsten when it became physical. So Kirsten only started losing her hair in about the 4th cycle of chemo, and she lost it really quickly, like within 48 hours. She lost all her hair. And then the kids were like, oh, okay, what's happened? And then we had to kind of explain to them, well, this happens. It's not permanent. Mum's on treatment for this amount of time, and then it's going to come back, right? So we got through that. Our approach had to change when Kirsten was diagnosed with metastatic, because we weren't going to lie, right? But we had to make the decision with a 11-year-old get my maths all wrong, but they were only 2 years older. What do we do here? And I think we made the same decision, but with a slight twist. We brought death into the equation. And our conversations were about the cancer is back. Now, whether we believed it back or well, actually never went is a separate question. But the cancer is back. Mum is going to go through a whole lot of treatment for the rest of her life. And there's going to be ups and downs. And we're just going to have to get through this as a family. We did get the inevitable question, are you going to die? The kids have got Google, they can find it. And our response was, not at the moment. Everybody dies and I'm not dying at the moment. And we only had that dying conversation with the kids. The Monday week before she passed away. So she passed away on the 7th of May. On the 29th of April, because the 27th of April, which was our anniversary, we had the conversation with the oncologist and we said, we're done. On the 29th, we got the kids in and said, and their response was, we knew. So I don't think as a parent who's going through this, you need, and this is my, not a professional opinion, but I think you don't underestimate what your kids can process, and getting them to process it in their own time is potentially better than hitting them with a sledgehammer. And I think that's the friends side. We cherry picked. We from day one had a very tight group, and I called them the Magnificent Seven, which was 7 mums and families who were unbelievably close to us, and I think I said that, they stepped in when everybody else stepped out, and they knew everything. They helped, like Megan did. They helped with the treatment. 2 of them were nurses, and with Megan, they were our hotline to what's going on. What do we do here? Got this weird side effect. What do you think? Even in the last week when, I had to call an ambulance and, Kirsten never came home. So yeah, I think in telling people, what we learned was there is no single message. There's different messages for different people with different relationships, with different maturity, with different understanding, but also with a different, Kirsten's whole thing was she wanted zero pity, right? She wanted to live. And I see that in my kids. I see them now coming to me, and I see them now in their friendship groups since Kirsten's passing, moving into different friendship groups that they've never had before. And I ask them why, and they say, because I don't want to be the kid whose mum died. So I see that resilience in them.
I think Kirsten and I spoke a lot about how much she should tell the children. And I know that you and her had talked about it a lot, and she had spoken to me about it as well. And I agree with Shane. It was about telling them kind of what they needed to know. Kids are pretty smart and pretty clever, and they do have Google, and so they'll Google it, and they have friends with opinions, and but they need time to process it. Everyone's different, and I remember saying to Kirsten, just tell them what you want them, but they'll come to you if they've got questions, and then you can tell them more. So you just kind of be guided a little bit by them. I think you're right, hitting them with a sledgehammer wasn't the way to go, and you just need to take time. And kids, or everyone, but kids specifically, take a lot more than we appreciate and understand a lot more than we appreciate. And certainly some of the conversations I had with the kids in those last couple of weeks, they knew a lot more than probably we had appreciated and really understood it. Yeah. And so I think I agree with Shane. I think you tell them what they need to, and different people with different family and different friends. I remember a conversation I had with Kirsten. I think it was after the first diagnosis. And she said to me, if I get any more people sending me flowers or telling me these things happen for a reason, or if anyone was going to get it, I was the right person, she wasn't going to punch them in the face. And I found this card that said that and sent it to her, and she's like, I'm going to frame it. Because, she's right, she wasn't about the pity. And so you do tailor what you tell people because of the reactions, because you don't actually want to spend your time supporting other people.
No.
It's like, that's ridiculous. So, and people have different understandings or different how much they want to know. And I think about, wider family members and stuff about what you would tell them and not tell them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't think I know for Kirsten, any form of sympathy was just not going to happen. It was like, I'm not dead yet, so we move on.
Yep.
And I think that drove her insane.
Yep.
And I think, and I also think the other side was there were also people who would make it about them. And I think that also, and different people react differently. But I think that all came down to I'm not dead yet. I'm still living. There's still things to do. All those people who will come on later helped her through that, and to be able to do that and to take control, because she wanted to live. She didn't want to be seen as the person who's dying from cancer. It's the person who was living with cancer. And I think I've mentioned this before, and we can get onto it later. The one thing that infuriated Kirsten from the day she was diagnosed with metastatic was this constant view from the professionals: no matter what you do, the outcome's going to be the same. I.e., no matter what you do, you're going to die. Okay, that's fine. But I want to control the in-between bit. So give me the independence and the forethought and the respect to control that bit. Because if I'm going to die anyway, that's the bit I want. And I think that drove her to do all the stuff, to find the independence, to live the life as much as she could in that. The one thing I'd say about that I learned, and I think I said this to a lot of people, but if I could have one more conversation with her, it would be that we underestimated what our kids saw for 5 years, for all the good things. We didn't have to tell them their mum was sick. We didn't have to tell them their mum was dying. They saw it, and because of that, because of us making a decision to be very transparent with what they saw, they were able to process it in their own time. And I think that I'm convinced that helped them, versus the old sledgehammer where mum's going to die, she's losing her hair, she's got cancer, it can be. I think there's a nuance to it that worked for us. I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but that was absolutely something. And I go back to my original comment. They didn't do the washing. They didn't clean their rooms. They did. But I think in hindsight, that was them living.
Yeah.
But they processed everything in their own time.
Yeah. So tell me about what it's like as someone who doesn't come from a healthcare background in being part of the consultations and trying to make sense of all the information, and any advice you would give to someone who perhaps might feel overwhelmed with a lot of healthcare information thrown at them, and what they should do with that.
I think that, look, the first thing I'd say is it's okay to feel overwhelmed, because it is an overwhelming situation. You're dealing with emotions, science, biology. We're not, as normal people, for want of a better term, not that medical people aren't abnormal, but as laymen, we're not trained. We're not trained for that. But I'd also say most of the medical profession is not trained to be a layman. So you're in this overwhelming situation, which is fine. I think my advice would be, use your appointments to listen more and talk less. And that's why I think it's really important that you either take somebody with you who can take notes, or you get your appointments, you record them. And then in your own comfort, when you're walking the dog, going for a walk, doing whatever you need to do, you can play that back to yourself, listen, digest, and start making your questions up, and then start forming those opinions by talking to people you trust, using Google or whatever you need to do to research those terms, and then form your own opinions. I think going in with too many questions and not absorbing them, you're just making a situation more overwhelming, because there's a finite time that your medical professional needs to get stuff across to you, and that's their objective. Unfortunately, I don't think their objective is to inform you or to make sure you understand. Their objective is to get the information that they're finding across to you. But it's your right to process that and come back. And I know one of the things that we learnt, call it in the second phase versus the first phase, is Kirsten, never agreed to treatment changes in a meeting. She would listen, take notes, go back, discuss, process questions, and then agree. So I think it's that old, don't make decisions under pressure. Process, because as much as you're dealing with a disease that is time bound, you have time to make informed decisions. You're not going to take weeks to make a decision, but you have a day, you have 2 days. You're not going to stuff up your treatment regime because you've taken 24 hours to process a decision. Sure, don't take 6 months, but you have time. And you owe yourself that time to be comfortable.
Megan, on one hand, it's we're in a time where there's so much information available online, and you can do that research and get clarity and confirmation. But on the other hand, because there is so much information, there is a lot of noise, and it's easy to access information that perhaps isn't as perhaps robust as might come from a medical professional. How do you think about what would you recommend to someone when they're looking at a lot of information available from various sources, and how they best kind of prioritize that or make sense of it?
It's really tricky. There's so much out there from reputable and not so reputable places to look at. So what I say to my patients is, you go and do your research. It's really important. Don't just, listen to me, go out there and research, but look for what I'd say reputable websites. So things like, oncology journals, or, society. So each country has their own kind of society of, say, oncology or whatever disease it happens to be. So go and kind of look at those reputable websites and try and find out the information. Like Shane said before, I wouldn't always listen to Facebook groups necessarily. So actually get the scientific information. And then discuss that with your doctor or a close friend if you've got someone that has the knowledge to say, look, I've been reading these things. What do you think about the study or this information or the latest? A lot of hospitals, will have latest guidelines that are accessible to the public, so you can look at those and see what they're recommending as well, and often the sources that they've come from, so that you can then go and do some more research. Your GP could be a really good advocate as well, because you could go in and talk about some of the information that you found that can help you guide it. And like Shane said, you don't make decisions in the moment, but you come back with those questions that you might email or send to your healthcare professional to work through with them. And there are, other resources around, such as like your breast care nurses and other people that help you on the journey that have the knowledge to sit and help you work through it as well. But it is overwhelming, the amount of information that you get. And if you're lucky enough to have someone that has some knowledge, get them to look at papers. Kirsten used to send me a lot of papers and other things to read, just to about trials and stuff, just to see what I thought about them.
I think that the Facebook pages that are good, because there's nothing like talking to people who are walking in your shoes. The one thing I would say, though, is social media, in fact, probably all research that's available, does not take into account the uniqueness of each individual's disease. So that's why I think it's really important, and Kirsten did an unbelievably good job of understanding her disease and then being able to apply her disease to all the information she was finding, that it doesn't all become unfulfilled expectations or, a vicious circle. And I think that's also the really important, but especially something like breast cancer, which is so complex, is understand your disease and then apply that.
Given everything that I guess the kids have gone through and experienced, and if we think about today and the information they've received and their experiences, how have they processed and I guess where are they at now?
I think, look, the processing comment's an interesting one because, being in this whole series about being authentic, we did have questions about, well, you lied to us and why didn't you tell us all this at the end? And I think there's some conversations you have with your kids at that stage, which is, well, we didn't think it was appropriate that you needed to know that because we think we would have gone backwards in the way we wanted to live our lives, and we made that decision for you. So, we were running a fine line. How they're going now with so the question on how did they process that information? I think they process it in their own way, and that's a simple thing to say, but it's true. You can't dictate to kids, friends, family how they process what's going on. All you can control is reacting to the way that they process it. Our 4 kids processed it in 4 very different ways and are processing it now in four very different ways. I think they have processed Kirsten's passing over 5 years. I don't think in the conversations I've had with them, they understood in 2020 when they were 6, whatever those ages were, that their mum would die 5 years later. And nor did we expect them to. But I do think as they've matured and as we've gone through this journey with them, and I think that's also, and again, we're not dictating to anybody how they should work through this journey with their family because that's their own individual decision. But for us, it definitely worked by being very transparent as much as we wanted to about the disease, the side effects, the impact on our lives, both positive and negative, and getting them to come along with this journey. I go back to, no, they didn't do the washing. No, they didn't. But they learned to live with, for 12 months, us having to do mum's shoelaces because she had so much swelling in her legs that she couldn't bend down. Or she had, the metastases to her spine that she couldn't bend down. And they accepted that. And we learned, they learned to live with her. So I think that helps them processing it. I think at the end of the day, they've still lost their mum, right? And they will process that forever. It comes in waves, and we just deal with those waves when they come, and, we try not to foreshadow what's going to happen, and we'll deal with it when it comes. And, on the funny side, I kind of deal with it, but mum said, well, okay, when do we draw the line with, okay, I don't know if mum said that, but, so I think, look, there's, they're dealing with it in their own way, and nothing's perfect. There is no textbook on that, and anybody who tells you there's a textbook are delusional and find somebody else, because you really just have to go with, your kids, your family, the way they're going to react. I'm finding as a parent or a single parent now, there's a fine line with your kids, and I've got 2 young adults now and 2, that there's a fine line between them reacting and behaving because they're growing up and they're pushing the boundaries versus behavior because they've lost their mum and they miss her and they need that guidance. And I think you've got to balance that as a parent, a single parent, because if you blur that line, you lose their trust on the one side or you miss something on the other side. So I think you've got to learn that. You've got to kind of work your way through that.
Something that did come up as well, Megan, was this point around coming back to Kirsten's desire to understand things so that she can control as much as she can, and to almost have the confidence in the when dealing with a medical professional, to ask questions, or to almost not push back, but to ensure you have clarity and cover all bases. Many people may feel that it's not, depending on their background or how they think, it may not be appropriate to bring those things up, or they may not feel confident, but have a something in the back of their mind, but won't bring it up. And I guess you're speaking personally, and you have a healthcare background too, so there's an interesting perspective that you have. But I guess, from in reflecting on that, what would you hope that individuals that might be going through their own journey and who are thinking about these kinds of things, like how can they feel empowered through that process, engaging with healthcare professionals?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, in medicine and health, because the way it's been set up for centuries, it's kind of quite patriarchal, and you don't kind of question it. And I think it's changing. So I think we see that every day, that's changing, and people come in with a lot more knowledge and wanting to ask questions and control what's happening, and not just be told, and be in partnership with their medical professionals. And I think that's really important. And so I encourage anyone to do that, no matter what you're facing, whether it's cancer or anything else. And it's good to see that that's changing. I think I feel really lucky that I got to be there, and Kirsten trusted me, and Shane trusted me to look at information and to help them with some of those questions. So Kirsten would often send me a list and said, so this is where I'm going to see such and such. These are my questions. Is there anything else you think I should ask, or that I haven't quite covered? And I'd often add a few more in and send back and go, yeah, ask this and ask that, especially after having conversations with her and knowing what she wanted to know, but perhaps it wasn't in the questions. And so being able to help her to do that. And so I guess, it sounds really arrogant, she's lucky that that I'm a doctor, that I was there to help that. And not everyone has a family member that's within that. But it's to find that practitioner, whether it's your GP or it is a family friend or your breast care nurse, or someone that you really can have those conversations with, that can help advocate for you if you can't. But also to be brave and ask those questions. It's okay. It's your disease or your journey. You need to be in control of it. And so you should ask that. And as medical professionals, we don't know everything, even though sometimes we can come across like we do, but we don't. And it's okay to be challenged. And if the practitioner you're talking to gets offended by that or doesn't like it, find a new one. Find someone that will partner with you and be with you on that journey and help you make those decisions that's right for you. There's not one size fits all. And so to make, to do it together, to make sure that it's right for you or for your family member. And so, and I know that's really hard, but I really encourage people to do that and find those right people to support you and to ask those questions. And to think about the questions before you go in, because when you get into that appointment, it's often quite short and they may be telling you more information, you forget about it. Yeah. So write them down and go in. And if you have the opportunity to send them first, so that the doctor then knows, or the nurse knows, what you're coming in to ask, so they can make sure that it's covered off. And don't get pushed out the door. To say, no, I've still got some questions. I still want to go, and actually be brave. And I know that's hard, and it's easy for me to say, as probably a very strong person and a medic, but to do that, I think it's really important we encourage that.
I mean, I think a couple of things Kirsten did, like to Megan's point, make sure you record your meetings.
Yeah.
Use voice memo, record them. If your medical practitioner's got a problem with them, ask them why. Why have you got a problem with me recording what you're saying so I can process it? I'm in the Medicare 15 minutes. I'm not trained. I want to process what you're telling me and come back to you. We recorded every single medical meeting we had. So we've got, and that's not to hold people to account. That's that we could understand it. I think, so that was really important. I think the other bit where, Megan was fantastic and we were lucky to have her, but I also think, you're going to talk to Tanya as well, is understand your scans, right? Your CTs, your PETs, your MRIs, it's all high-powered medical speak, but you can dumb it down.
Yeah.
You either got a shitty one or an okay one. It's here or it's not there, or it's going there and it's going there, or that's okay, that's not. But understand it. Get somebody to explain to you what it says so you can understand. And some people might not want to understand, and that's okay. But I think if you can understand what you're doing, you can make, I know Kirsten could make really good decisions about the next treatment option. What was the side effect? What could she do? Could we go on holiday? Could we go here? Could we go there? I think, and when you get into the radiology or the oncology meeting, tell them you're talking to me. I know nothing. Dumb it down.
Yeah.
It's really important that you understand that. And I think, to Megan's point, we made, let's call it medical personnel changes in Kirsten's journey because Kirsten wanted people who treated her, not the disease. And I think from the experience we had, and we understand the medical system better, we understand PBS better, we understand all those things. But I think the one big thing, and this is why we're doing all this, is in something as complex as breast cancer, find somebody who's treating you and not just treating the disease. It's got to be two ways. Because if they're just treating the disease, you fall away. And then where do you start living?
Yeah, I agree.
Or continue to living.
And, people say, oh, but we're in the public system, like we don't have private insurance. How do you do that? Well, you can. You can actually say, I want to see a second opinion. I want to see a different practitioner. And so it's empowering people to do that. I think having recording those conversations was really valuable because that often send them to me to listen and to make sure their understanding of what they'd got out of it was what I understood from it. Kirsten got into the point where she'd transcribe them all and then she'd just send them to me for me to kind of read and go through. And that was really important, I think, for me to check her understanding, but also to say, actually, I don't get that, but can you, ask that, but again, just to help with those questions. And the same with the radiology, because they are really, it is gobbledygook. It is. They are complex. To be able to go, yes, this is what I'm seeing, or that doesn't make sense, go back and get it reread.
Yeah.
We did that a few times.
And ask for a second opinion. And I think the other thing Kirsten did, because we spent, Megan as well, spent hours, doing it is understand your medical team. Your primary would be your oncologist. They don't get too many repeat customers, right? So it's high pressured, 15 minutes, a lot of people to see whether it's private or public. Yeah. So use email, use questions. Don't use, so we moved away from using the 15 minutes as a question and answer session. We started using the 15 minutes or the half an hour as an information session. Recording it, said nothing. Just talk at me. Go back and say, here's a bunch of questions I have. Come back to me with those. Because you don't, and I think, understand the environment your doctor's in as well. And you have email, I'm convinced they will come back to you. But use that where you can process the information and get a second opinion and ask questions around, well, is this the right treatment? Is this a side effect? Could I do this? Could I do that? Are we going, is there a trial? Is there a better trial? What's the trial criteria? Could I do some chemosensitivity testing? Could I, all those kinds of things. You're not going to get those answers in 15 minutes and you're going to leave frustrated.
Yeah. Such a great, way to think about making the best use of time and what suits how to get the most out of those, the valuable time with your healthcare professionals. And if you've got that opportunity to communicate on other channels as well, then that's amazing. I'm looking forward to speaking with a few of those medical professionals and clinicians that supported Kirsten along that journey, and those will be in subsequent episodes of this podcast. I guess to start to round out this conversation here, I think already I've got a good sense of what you're hoping that others may get from these conversations. But if you were to summarize what you'd really hope that, be it women who are receiving a diagnosis or undergoing treatment for breast cancer, and even the families, in hearing Kirsten's story, what would you hope they take away?
I'd hope they'd get a sample and examples of things they can go and find out and do to own their journey, to personalize their journey for what they want to get out of it, what their family needs are, what their experiences are, and more importantly, what they still what they still want to do, not what they can't do, right? There's a lot of things you can't do, given, but there's a bigger list of things you can still do. And if what we're talking about here can help them, one person still do those things, tick the box. That's what Kirsten wanted. Yeah. It was an ongoing conversation we always used to have. Am I dying or am I living? That's a choice you have to make. No one else can make that for you. And if we can give some information through Kirsten's experiences, wherever she's now, she'll go, yep, that's good.
Yeah. I think in my conversations with Kirsten are the same thing. And for me, it's about each person's individual and whatever diagnosis they get, how they choose to kind of experience that has to be individualized. So there will be people who go, I just want to trust my doctor, I just want to turn up, do my things, and I don't want to know anything else, and I don't want it to be that. And there'll be other people who will want to know and try everything and will want to research and will want to be able to make sure they cover everything. And that's okay. Every journey's different. Everyone's different. But to give them permission, I guess, to do that, to tailor it to what they want to do, and also to, if you've got breast cancer, to live with the disease, not it be your whole life. So do the things you want to do, have your lunches out, kind of have a life, and it's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. And I think that's one thing I always will admire about, Kirsten's last 5 years, is that she had this amazing, rich life with lots of fun things, and I got to experience a lot of that with her and do some fun things that, while the cancer was always there, it didn't control all of it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think, what we're trying to do in this is not make out that it's all fun. It's not, right? It's not shits and giggles. It's hard work. It's tough. You're watching people you love on both sides of the equation suffer. That's not fun. But on the flip side, you're watching them still and helping them still be able to live the life they want to until they can't anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the many big debates we used to have was, am I better off knowing I've got an incurable disease and I will die in a time, or am I better off just getting hit by a bus?
Yeah, her and I talk about that all the time as well.
and that is the reality of what comes into your mind. And I think if you're on the side of, I've got an incurable disease, I'm going to die in a time, but no one actually knows, right? This whole time thing from our experience is a guess, because you don't know what treatment's around the corner. You don't know how your body's going to react. Kirsten's decline was neurological. No one predicted it. And her decline was 10 days. From being fit and fit in inverted commas, healthy, going through treatment. Yes, we had issues. We had some big issues. But we were in New Zealand for Kirsten's mum's 80th. We were in Adelaide for a basketball tournament with our daughter. She came back on Easter Monday. She went into hospital on the 24th of April and she died on the 7th of May. It was a neurological decline. No one could have predicted that. So the question then comes in, if you don't want being hit by a bus option, what do you do with that time? And that's what you can control. And that's what we just want to tell, that story of how these are the things that can hopefully help you control that time that we learnt.
I mean, I personally feel, Richard, just hearing the conversations and having the almost inspiration to, in difficult times, making, getting clarity to help you through that journey. So I can only imagine those that are in a remotely similar path to her will get so much from this series. And I know I can only imagine it would be difficult to share that with us in this conversation today. So I'm remarkably grateful for that. And looking forward to see where, I guess, the story goes next, because I know you're passionate about ensuring that even more people.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said in the beginning, the story for us next is I'm going to start a charity in Kirsten's name. Our plan is to launch it on the first anniversary of her death, so around about May next year, and we're going to focus on supporting women through fundraising and whatever else we need to do around personalised care. So personalising the journey, and that would be around all the things you'll hopefully have in the podcast: diet, nutrition, fitness, exercise. I'm going to use the term complementary treatments, not alternative treatments, but complementary treatments. And, the bit which is the future, but which Kirsten, I would use the term pioneered with her oncologist, was chemosensitivity testing and DNA testing and all those things where it's coming where the treatment can be personalized. But we're talking about a journey. That's just the treatment. There's still the other things that are involved in this. That
mental health is in there too.
What's that?
Mental health.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And the mental well-being side. Yeah.
And I think the other thing that you guys did really well, and I know it was hard, was a long time out when Kirsten could talk about what she did want at the end. Like, she kind of did her advanced treatment plan and all of those things. And her and I spoke extensively about what that would be and what she would want and what she wouldn't want. And when that point, would come in. And I think she recognised that, when the end did come, that she probably wasn't going to be able to make the same decision she could make, 12 months or 18 months earlier, because we would be very frightened and very scared. And so to have had those conversations with her, so I was very clear about, as the medical power of attorney, I was very clear about what that would look like at the end, and that it was all very well documented. I've got a copy of that. And also just setting up some of the things for the kids, the supports and stuff going forward. Like, she did a lot of forward planning with that as well. And I think that's really important, because I think I see it all the time in my work, is that you kind of think there's time to do that. Yeah. And things can change really rapidly, and then you don't get that opportunity. So I think having that thoughtful, to actually think about doing that a long time out, and to have those conversations when she was really well. And, we had multiple conversations around that, walking around the river, close to where I live, and going out for lunch. And we had talked about it extensively, and then done all the legal stuff around it. I think was really important, so that when we came into those last couple of weeks, when it did happen really quickly, quite sudden decline, it wasn't a scramble to think about what would this look like. We kind of knew. And I think, and I like to think, and I don't know, I might speak out of turn, that for you and for the kids, to be able to hand that bit over to me, it took some kind of burden off you at the end, knowing that was kind of being the medical power of attorney, that
that's why we did it, right?
So you guys could just focus on each other.
We didn't want to make any emotional decisions based on, they had to be medically based decisions on what Kirsten wanted, and take the emotion out of it. I think, just listening to what Megan was saying, I think, I don't know, can they predict when the end comes? Question. But it can come really quickly. And it came really quickly with us, right? I think, and not just Kirsten's passing, but her neurological decline. Listening to what Megan said, there is a lot of value in doing the hard things first. Wills, get them sorted. That you don't have to worry when in the position that you don't know what's in wills. Those little things that for us made moving to the next phase, for want of a better term, right? For us as a family, which is now 5 instead of 6, not having to worry about wills, probate, estates, houses, titles, medical power of attorneys, because that was all taken care of. It helps that next phase. And move on. We will never move on. We will just learn to live with a new rhythm, right? But those things I think are really, those are the small things. There's the old football sport terminology, the 1%ers. Yeah. Those are the small things that when I've spoken to other families who've gone through similar things, whether it's cancer or other terminal diseases, or whether it is being hit by a bus or having a heart attack or an aneurysm, those things cause stress. And you've got enough stress, and I'm grateful. And I'll admit, I used to put it off. I used to go and say, when somebody says you're dying, we'll go and do it. But through her fearless determination, we had all our wills done. I've had mine done. And I'm not talking about the simple Google will. I'm talking about a proper will that takes care of your kids in the complex environments that we meet, that we have when partners may meet new partners. My kids might be married 3, 4, 5 times. How do we take care of that we don't have to worry about it? And I think those are things that are hard. They're really hard to sit down and have those conversations. We have 2 minors still. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. What happens to those minors? And those are hard conversations, but have them.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think when we made the decision to move Kirsten to palliative care in those last kind of 5 days, and then had the conversation with the kids that Friday night, I think it was kind of knowing that
Myers family meeting.
Yeah, that Myers family meeting. Oh, it was all right. I've been in worse. And to be able to say, right, I'm the power of, everyone knew, but I was the power of attorney, and so what goes now, I kind of controlled that medical side of it. And I think for Shane, that took, that burden off having to make any emotional decisions, but also for the kids. But then to say to them, but you can ask me anything, and you can come and ask those medical questions. You can ask what this is, what's going to happen and stuff. And I did have conversations with the kids individually around that at different times with them. And I think that was a real privilege to be able to do that. And I'm really grateful that I was trusted to do that, and to be able to kind of, help Kirsten with that, because it wasn't something that she was able to do, or that you were in any state to do at that point. And so to be able to do that is really important. So to set those things up early in the time when you're feeling well and you know what you want and all that good stuff.
You can think clearly.
Yeah, it's really important. And to do all the legal paperwork that we had to do around it. And I think that was really important. And I think it made it in a really horrible time. Not that any of it was easy, but it probably made that little bit easier.
Yeah. No, it didn't probably. It did. It did.
Look, even in just this episode, there's been some real practical advice that someone can take away, right away, and put in place that provides some reassurances, but also some of that inspirational. But I like the term you used, Megan, around the permission that someone needs in order to continue down a pathway. So I'm hopeful that not just from this episode, but over this series, we'll be able to continue that story on. So Shane, Megan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Kirsten Myers' story. We hope this conversation got you thinking, or perhaps inspired, about living with courage, clarity, and connection. By sharing Kirsten's story, we hope that you or someone you love feel more informed, supported, and empowered along the way. You'll find more conversations in this series, and please share this episode with someone who'll get some value from it. Through these conversations and the village around her, Kirsten's story continues. If you'd like updates and more information, there'll be some links in the show notes of this episode, and ways to continue Kirsten's legacy. I'm Peter Birch, and this is Kirsten's story.